evening, everyone. If you can please make your way to a seat. Thank you. If everyone could please make their way to a seat so we could get started. Thank you. Okay, as we begin, I wish to acknowledge the Sooke Nation on whose traditional territory we gathered this evening. We wish to recognize and respect our neighboring First Nation government as well as their historical relationship with the lands and seas that continues to this day. As we begin, and before we get into the agenda, I wish to take a moment to acknowledge a very special employee of ours. As you may know, in May of last year, Sooke Fire and Rescue was selected to host the 2018 British Columbia Fire Training Officers Association Conference from May 26th to 31st of 2018. In a world of ever-changing standards and regulations, the BCTOA provides fire departments with the most current, up-to-date course information and training requirements so they may effectively and safely train their members. The Sooke Conference was highly regarded by the BCTOA executive as well as the 160-plus delegates and presenters who were impressed with the community of Sooke and the caliber of training that was offered. Mr. Brian Uhl, First Vice President, said that I think I can speak for the rest of the executive and say my hats go off to all the students and instructors in Sooke for the annual conference. The energy and effort to train for your communities is first class. Our association continues to have that family-style mentality that is awesome to watch and to be a part of. Too many people to thank so far. Those who had a hand in organizing and delivering such great material, I say bravo to all. Each year at the conference, the BC Fire Training Officer of the Year is awarded to a deserving nominee. The award recognizes a deserving individual who must belong to a member organization. Nominations are accepted and reviewed by the Executive Committee and the Office of the Fire Commissioner. Recipients must have had a demonstrated record of exceptional work of the fire service, including initiating new ideas in training, creativity in the use of resources, highest quality of work, dedication beyond normal, and service both within and outside of their own department. Our very own Captain Norris-Jones continues to inspire those around him to do better at what they do. He is a mentor, team contributor, and amazing asset to the Sooke Fire Rescue Department. It was an honor, I heard, that he was witnessed by his chief in formally being recognized for his tremendous contributions to our community amongst his peers and his family. So tonight we have our captain here with us, as well as the chief, and also the award that he was given. So we just want to take a moment to recognize our captain. Thank you very much for your service and for your leadership in our community. Okay, thank you, everyone. So as we get into the agenda, there are a few things that just need to be shifted into their appropriate spots. So first off, item 4, the reconsideration request by the mayor should follow after item 12 as new business. So that should move to new business. Sorry. Which is number 12.
12.1?
Yep, so that should actually be 12.1. And then also we have an item to add, which is 11.4. So we'll add that under section 11. You'll see 11.1, Kennedy Street drainage, 11.4. We'll follow that on the pages. So that would be how I would like the agenda to flow, please. So if I could have a motion. Okay, motion by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Pearson to approve those changes. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, we have minutes of the regular meetings of council here tonight for adoption. We have May the 14th and May the 28th. We'll move them together. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any questions or corrections? Seeing no hands, all those in favor, opposed, and that's also carried unanimously. So that brings us into our delegation section this evening, of which we have 5. So for every speaker that comes up this evening, please recognize that you have 5 minutes for your delegation. There is a timer in front of you. And as you all likely know and don't like, I do tend to hold you to the time so we can move through the agenda. So first speakers tonight then will be the Canada Day funding. I'd like to welcome the Sooke Lions forward, please. And if you could please just turn on the microphone. Councillor Parkinson.
I have to leave the room, as I said, on the steering committee.
Councillor Brenda Parkinson has a conflict and needs to declare, so she's exiting. And Councillor Pearson also has a conflict. You're also on the steering committee?
No, but I'm part of their organization for the day. So.
Okay, he has an interest there as well.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we still have quorum. We're good, so we will find you momentarily. Thank you, councillors. And welcome, Mr. Beddoes.
Good evening. Yes, my name's Al Beddoes, Carpenter Road in Sooke. I'm here to represent Steve Wright in the Sooke Canada Day Committee. Some of you may know the Sooke Canada Day Committee is operated by the Sooke Lions Club, although all monies that we use are kept separate from the Lions. The reason why I'm here today is that for the past 5 years, as the Lions has taken over this project, and we feel that we've done a fairly good job at it, is we understand that it might be more beneficial if we had it as a line item every year, because it's obviously Canada Day. It's not going to go away, and we'll be doing it every year. So we're asking Council to consider a $10,000 line item. Noted that this year we've already been awarded $6,000 to carry off this project. One of the reasons why we're asking for a little bit more for next year is we're finding that we're wearing some of our merchants down. We come to them each and every year. We come to them for the musical ride. We come to them for Canada Day. And we would like to sort of give some of them a little bit of a rest. So we're requesting $10,000 for the year and per year for the 5-year budget.
Mr. Beddoes, I have a question. The entry is by donation, that's correct?
The entry is, yes, we have 2 donation boxes that we set up, and people can put in whatever they feel like. And some people are very generous at $20. Some put in nothing, and we're not there to police them and force them to do anything. It is for the citizens of Greater Sooke, and it's our job as Lions to make that happen for everybody.
And then you still have plans for the bus service that would take our residents.
We have a shuttle bus we put on because it's an all-day event, and the parking is rather limited down in that neck of the woods on Canada Day.
No, we certainly appreciate the work that your club does. Councillor Ray, please.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. to Mr. Beddoes. Are you starting for next year? You've got 6,000 for this year. Is
We
that
have
sufficient?
6,000 for this year, correct, from the council, yes.
Okay, so you're just talking about next year's budget.
Yeah, we were talking with some staff members and other people, and they suggested that we come and ask for it to be a line item.
Okay.
And it's a lot easier for us to plan. The budget is over $20,000, and when we only have 6 and 1,000 from the CRD, we have to do a lot of scrambling to raise the rest.
So if I can, Your Worship, just because we don't do these on the fly, we've got lots of time, I'd like to move a motion that staff bring a report. I certainly support it, but I think we need to follow
understood.
the process.
Yeah, we're not in a rush.
To bring a report to council, because they're not asking for the money this year. So bring a report to council in the early fall or when it's available, and outline the request.
Okay.
Come before council.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Loggins. Okay. Anything to speak to? Councillor Loggins as a seconder? Councillor Berger? Okay. Sounds good. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll
Thank you
get
very
that
much.
report, and thank you very much for taking this on and on behalf of the community. We really appreciate it. I know. We will see you very soon. Thank you very much. We'll return the councillors. Oh, there they are. Okay, I'd like to welcome our next presenter tonight, Dr. Philip Ney, please, with the Horizon Unbound Rehabilitation and Training Society. Welcome. If you could please turn on the microphone, and I understand that you've had these items distributed to us as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes, just need you to turn on the microphone, sir. There we go. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mayor and Councillors. I'm glad to be here. The previous times I've been here, I've been well received and well heard. Our situation is as much a concern for the community as it is for us, namely drug abusing young people. It's a national crisis, it's a local crisis, and there is no appropriate treatment. All the things that have been tried have not worked. Why? Because the young people can always get their drugs. So we have a seagoing program, and when they're at sea, they can't get their drugs. What we need is community support. Specifically, we need a berth. And we're looking at a berth that's available at the government or the Fisherman's Wharf. Now, we have evidence that that wharf is there for the community, but it's not responding to me. I've made 3 presentations. I've had no response in writing or verbally. I have denied a berth for our ship. It's slightly bigger, but it can be well accommodated at that place. And so we ask for your support. We have a long history. Since 1972, I've been running programs here and in Hong Kong, and we have taken thousands of young people to sea. There you see a picture of the... Can you turn that around a bit? That's such a beautiful picture. A beautiful picture of a junk. Oh, you see it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And our schooner, the Robertson II, everybody knew about the Robertson II. I bought it in Nova Scotia, sailed it through the Panama Canal. And we have taken hundreds and thousands of young people to sea. And there has been amazing benefit. I say that on the basis of statistics. I'm a retired professor. I do research in this area. I publish papers. There is nothing that works for drug-abusing children. And so we're having a seagoing program, but we need a seagoing base, and we need your support. We have all the pieces in line and ready to go. And I'm very pleased that this evening I have with me as a delegation my accountant, and he can answer financial questions. I have 2 members of the senior retired armed forces. And we have got crew, and we have very good backing. We want the community backing. The problem is such that unless you've got a good program, and we have a good program, you can do more harm than good. And the community is understandably ambivalent about it. Drug-addicted kids, they're just a nuisance, lock them up and throw away the key. Or, if it's your kids, please, somebody help me. And so it's a very interesting conundrum, a conflict for people of the community. And we can give you an opportunity here. You see the young people, they go to sea, they go up into the wilderness, and they are standing on the deck under a waterfall, they're fishing, they're sailing, and they go to sea initially 3 parts of a program with their parent. And there is parent-child bonding like there hasn't been in the child's upbringing. And you need that. And these young people are challenged. They have survival challenges. They have cooperative activity challenges. They go into these little dinghies, I don't know if you can see them, with their father and see if they can beat another father and son pair. It works, but we don't have emerge. And when I make a very careful formal appeal, you'll see it there in your handout, I get no response, nothing. No correspondence. And the community needs to respond because it's your problem. And you need to be able to have some kind of influence on the Sooke Harbour Authority. Yes, we have a specific request, and if Richard will read the motion we're suggesting, here it is, Your Honour. Richard, please.
Your Honour, we believe that the community...
Sir, if you could please come up to the microphone, thank you. And I'm just a worship, not an honor.
Your Worship,
Thank you.
we believe that the community of Sooke have an interest in how the local small craft harbour is being run, and that while we as a private not-for-profit society have been unable to gain access to the board, we would respectfully suggest that a member of the Sooke Council could legitimately and in the public interest should request a seat on the Sooke Harbour Authority Board. And so our motion is that in order to support the Horizons Unbound Rehabilitation and Training Society, that the Sooke Council take a direct interest in how the Sooke Harbour Authority is being run in the public interest. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. So that's time. Questions from members of council. We'd like to thank you for bringing us some more awareness about the program. So I understand it's you're looking for space at the government wharf, so perhaps a letter of support from council for that request. And then secondly, we could look at gaining more information about that. I'll turn to Councillor Parkinson, please.
So I would, through you, Your Worship, I was about to say the same thing. I would like the district to send a letter of support to the Harbour Authority requesting that the Hertz Group has a place for moorage. And I would also, in that letter, request finding out about one of council members sitting on the Sooke Harbour Authority Board.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Loggins. Further discussion, Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Your Worship, I think it's a very good program. You've been coming to council for a decade since I've been here, and I've always enjoyed hearing the stories that you have had to say, and I think it's a very good program, and I think we should be a part of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pearson?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. So 85 feet you're asking for at the government dock. Is that seasonal? Is that your request seasonal, or is it year-round?
No, Kevin, it's a good question. This ship is, as you can see, equipped with a wheelhouse. In the wheelhouse, we have all modern electronic equipment.
Yep.
We intend to operate 10 months of the year.
Okay.
And we intend to pay the crew proper wages. And as you probably know, the shore-based programs that don't work charge $25,000. We'll charge half of that and get a much better result. But no, we'll operate pretty well all year round.
Okay, thank you. And I just know that the government dock at winter time is their toughest time because the commercial fishermen that are left are coming back there. So I know it seems to fill up at that time of year. But I was just kind of thinking about the government dock in itself. So. Right,
and I might add, Sooke is the ideal because we have access to the open ocean, which the kids need to see, and they have access to the inlet. And we go up to Butte Inlet, which is our favorite. And so they have wonderful opportunities both ways. And I have very, very, very well-informed and experienced advisors. I wanted to point out we have a
Sorry,
representative
Dr. Nayward, we have a motion on the floor now, so I need to thank you for your comments, but I have to leave it at that. Yes, thank you. Unless there's questions from council, anything further from members of council? So given that this is a community asset, this will provide us with some more information on the Harbour Authority and how that works, so we'll look forward to getting that. The motion here is to send the letter of support and also to request a council liaison role to the Harbour Authority. That's correct? Okay. All right, so motion from council then, or sorry, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
Thank you
Dr.
very
Nate.
much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
So move on to our next delegation tonight. We have the Sooke Region Multi-Belief Initiative, the Charter for Compassion Awareness Drive, please.
I'd like to thank your worship and members of council for this opportunity to talk about the possible designation of Sooke as a compassionate community. And I'm here as a member of the Sooke Region Multi-Belief Initiative. I'll speak to that in a little bit further on. I'm going to try to stay within the 5 minutes, or I will stay within the 5 minutes, so I won't go on too long. But Sooke is often referred to as the volunteer capital of Canada, and rightly so. There are more than 180 nonprofit groups that are helping out in our community and region and helping the less fortunate and striving to make their lives better. So Sooke is... which presentation? Does it say the top one? Thank you. I believe that's it. That's it, right. That's a picture of as you come into Sooke. But Sooke is a good candidate for recognition as a compassionate community. More than 400 cities, towns, neighborhoods around the world, with a combined population of about 630 million, in 52 countries already have a designation or recognition as compassionate communities. And when we look in British Columbia, Vancouver, Victoria, Nanaimo, Parksville, Powell River have affirmed this one-page charter, which I believe was included in your material. Oh, I should be going like this. Okay, sorry. And to the effect that that they affirmed the Charter for Compassion. And so part of the key in the Charter for Compassion, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Up. Sorry about this. Okay. There's a belief that a compassionate world is possible when every man, woman, and child treats others as they wish to be treated themselves, with dignity, equity, and respect. It's really the golden rule. And the origin for the Charter of Compassion, by the way, was Karen Armstrong. She's a British scholar and author who gave a TED Talk back in 2008. It was an award-winning TED Talk about dealing with issues of global concern, and she really felt that global compassion was a way to address the pressing issues pressing humanity, both at a macro global level, but also on a micro level within communities. And there was a real groundswell of interest and support. The people like the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu came out strongly in support of Karen Armstrong's vision. And there's it's an aspirational document, but it's not pie in the sky. It's not naive because it's linked to what they call compassionate action plans. The communities that are recognized have compassionate action plans dealing with issues of concern in their community. And Mayor Tait had a District of Sooke Healthy Community Summit in May 2016, and it led to the creation, amongst other things, of the Sooke Region Multi-Belief Initiative. And this is a small gathering of Sooke region residents, many of them from faith-based backgrounds, and they try to promote respect, tolerance, and harmony through mutual understanding and acts of kindness. The term acts of kindness is important. And we're currently seeking a broad base of support for having Sooke designated as a compassionate community through service communities, community leaders like yourself, and also interested, concerned individuals. And we did, for instance, have a workshop in March 2017 where we had over 20 participants, and we identified what some of the really pressing issues are in our community. I'd like to emphasize that getting recognition as a compassionate community by something called the Charter of Compassion International, which is based on Bainbridge Island near Seattle, this is not a seal of approval or a certification. It's just a recognition, and this group on Bainbridge Island is just there to help. I've spoken with a few of them, and they're just encouraging us to do it because there's a feeling that in a sense, we're already there, although we do have pressing problems in our community. And so I'm just asking Council if they would consider affirming the Charter of Compassion individually or potentially as a Council. But there's no motion I want to put forward at this time. But please be assured that there's no financial commitment or other obligation to the District of Sooke in expressing your agreement with the values and aspirations that are stated in a one-page Charter of Compassion document. You're already doing a great deal of unselfish work in our community. Council has this ongoing support for the food bank every year, which I respect greatly. But still more action is needed. We just talked about drug addiction, but there's poverty, homelessness, loneliness in our community. And if we were to put together a plan for compassionate action and address these issues on a priority basis, then I think that it would be a good idea to submit to the Charter for Compassion International for recognition of this wonderful community as a compassionate community, which we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ziegler, for your presentation tonight and for bringing this forward. I'm quite moved by it, actually, and Council willing would be happy to sign it on behalf of Council and have others choose to do so on their own accord as members of Council. Questions, comments from members of Council? Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through to Mr. Ziegler. So to be recognized by this charter, do we have to do something as a group? Like, do we have to put in an application, or do you do that, or what's the process for that?
Thank you. That's a very good question. The Sooke Region Multi-Belief Initiative would prepare with input from as many broadly based as possible, and we're seeking that input, a compassionate action plan. And then we would submit it to this group in Bainbridge, and they don't really review it or seal it saying, hey, you're a compassionate community, but with that action plan there would be short and longer term objectives. I haven't been doing a good job on this, but sorry. But on a micro level, we can we could be that compassionate action plan would be, say we're addressing an issue such as homelessness. I know Council already has done fine work in supporting the building of affordable housing. And we would put that in our Compassionate Action Plan, continued work in this direction. And so it would kind of amalgamate and put together work that's already being done and perhaps provide direction for more work.
So I guess, do you need anything from us as a council at this point?
Well, it would be nice if there could be an affirmation of the principles of the Charter for Compassion. And, of course, if we have sessions, when we got together in March 2017, Mayor Tait was there, and she helped discuss, what priority areas we could focus on. And, yes, affirmation of the Charter would be wonderful.
Well, I think I'll move a motion then that, I'll move a motion that the District of Sooke and Council endorse the Charter for compassion awareness, we can get the right wording from the document.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So that's been moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Anything to add, Councillor Parkinson?
Just here's my warrant.
Okay. Councillor Parkinson has signed hers. Councillor Pearson?
Thank you. I'll grab it from you. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation today, Mr. Ziegler, through the chair. And I think really this is a value statement, and I think it really signifies about who we are as a community. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anything else? See none, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously, and we'll be in touch once we'll print one and sign it.
Thank you.
For me. Thank you, Mr. Ziegler.
There's one. I didn't have mine printed.
Okay, next up I have 7.4, expanded local government advertising from the Sooke Pocket News. Welcome.
Hi there. My name is Britt Santowski from 2206 Church Road, pretty sure. I'm just going to read. The deadline for the UBCM resolutions is June 30th. I would like to urge Council to consider proposing a resolution to modify Section 29 of the Interpretation Act, which defines a newspaper. And I don't know what protocol is, so whether or not this can even go forward, but I want to put the bug in your ear. Got it, thank you. There we go. And if this is something that either you can bring forward to UBCM or the Vancouver Island version of that. The problem is that municipalities are required to publish mandated notices in print paper. This may or may not be the best use of public dollars, but municipalities do not have the freedom to make a different choice. You are not free to advertise with the publication with the greatest reach. You are not free to advertise with the publication with the most competitive rates. And you are not free to support local businesses, specific to print paper and non-print paper. The cause of the problem is the interpretation of newspapers in the Interpretation Act, Section 27, which requires municipalities to advertise mandated notices only in print paper. And a short walk down history lane will show that smart changes reflecting shifts in the distribution of news have historically been made. You have before me, a 2004 definition that reads that newspapers mean a printed publication in sheet form intended for general circulation, published regularly at intervals of not longer than a week, consisting in great part of news of current events of general interest, and sold to the public and to regular subscribers on a genuine subscription list. This definition in 2004 excluded the free newspapers that currently is the only print paper in Sooke. Making this change in 2004, they wiped out the there we go. They wiped out the last section that specified that it was sold to the public and there had to be a regular subscription list. Had the pre-2004 definition continued, many municipalities, including Sooke, would have had nowhere to advertise your mandated notices. That change in 2004 was good. Since the 2004 amendment, the internet and social media have dramatically changed how people access the news. Its impact is palpable, with La Presse, which is Quebec's main print paper, went paperless 6 months ago in December 2017. Note that their business model hasn't changed. What did change was the medium upon which they deliver news. Under the current definition, local municipalities must print your mandated notices on a medium that could arguably go paperless. Personally, I think this is the direction of news in general, is moving towards paperless. For me, the best way to propose what I'm proposing is that Council put forward a motion to further amend the interpretation by removing 4 words, getting rid of the words a printed publication in sheet form, so just reducing it to publication. So a newspaper would be defined as a publication intended for general circulation, published at regular intervals with a regular period of a week or daily, consisting of current news of a general interest. Besides addressing technology-induced vulnerabilities of print, including the possible shift to online only, this will level the playing field for other paperless publications with regular distributions and objectives consistent with the current print paper. What's in it for you? It'll expand your advertising options, your advertising reach, and it could also possibly lower your cost. I don't see this in any way raising your costs. It could be a redistribution of where you advertise and also where you choose to advertise. It'll broaden that base. I've taken the liberty of proposing a dummy resolution, dummy meaning mock-up, not me. So the resolution I propose is that whereas many constituents are now accessing community news and current events through daily and weekly online publications, and whereas municipalities should be free to advertise mandated notices additionally or exclusively in these daily and weekly online publications, therefore be it resolved that the Interpretation Act, Section 29, in defining a newspaper, be modified to read as I proposed. And that's that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Santowski. Councillor Parkinson, and then I have some information.
Through you, Your Worship, to staff. I was just wondering if this was possible to do to make the resolution go forward.
It is possible, although outside of the normal suggested flow for a motion being put forward, it's always recommended that it be put forward to the local Vancouver Island chapter for endorsement before being forwarded to the UBCM. That deadline was back in late winter when Council did consider another motion. It's not impossible, but in my experience would probably not be considered this year and probably forwarded to next year, which means it would be forwarded to the Vancouver Island chapter first.
Yeah, just to add to that, it is the process where they want as much to go to the AVICC, so we could send it, but likely the response would be that it would be referred back to the AVICC, which is next year, and then go forward that way. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say, it's late to send to AVICC, but we can put in a late submission to it, so we could actually put it forward to the upcoming AVICC, and then it can go forward then to UBCM, correct?
The intake isn't open yet for AVICC, so we could prepare it, and then as soon as they do the intake, it would just go to, and AVICC meets in April. It's too late for, AVICC is in April, and the resolutions are heard annually in April, so it's too late for this year to flow to UBCM, but we're early for next year's process, is just my point. So we could do that so that it would be ready to go, and then as soon as the intake opens, then we could send it. I will point out, though, that in looking through the UBCM's database, there has been two brought forward recently. So in 2016, Cowichan Valley RD put one forward called Establishing Local Public Notice Policy. In the short form, it was to, therefore, be it resolved that the Local Government Act and Community Charter be amended to replace the mandatory requirement to advertise in newspapers with the requirement for local government to adopt a public notice policy based on local criteria that would enable local government to choose their own manner of providing public notice tailored to best serve their community. So that was endorsed by, that came through the AVICC, and it was endorsed, the Resolutions Committee endorsed it, and the delegates also endorsed it in 2016. And then in 2017, Penticton put another forward, and this one was called Public Notices, and it was basically saying, whereas 94 of the Community Charter prescribes public notice provisions through a newspaper distributed at least weekly, whereas other forms of media have a far greater reach, therefore be it resolved that the Ministry of Community, Sport and Cultural Development be requested to conduct a comprehensive review and evaluation of the statutory advertising provisions with a view to amending such provisions in response to the technological advances of recent years. That was endorsed by the Southern Interior Local Government Association, and the UBCM also endorsed it. And the provincial response to these are that they responded by saying that Section 94 provides a degree of flexibility for communities to use alternative means where it is not practical to publish a public notice in a paper. Additionally, the Community Charter also implicitly authorizes additional public notices, including the internet or other means. While there is some flexibility in place, the province recognizes the media environments are evolving in communities through BC. Though local newspapers continue to reach residents in many communities, electronic and internet-based forms have increasingly become a useful tool. Any changes to public notice requirements would have considerable policy implications. Therefore, careful consideration and consultation would be necessary. The province will continue to monitor the changes throughout BC and is willing to engage in the UBCM regarding potential changes to public notice requirements. So that was their actual response. They haven't actually started that consultation piece yet with the UBCM, likely because there's other things that are on the table right now, but this means that the UBCM will track it. So for myself, it would seem appropriate that we send it through our channels through the AVICC so that it follows up again next year. And I think we're likely going to be one of many communities doing the same thing, and then that'll just sort of move the province along. So that would be I think, the best course of action for us to take, and it's one that makes sense. And it looks like it's on their radar, but they haven't delved into it yet. Councillor Pearson.
Yes, through the chair, thank you, Ms. Santowski, for your presentation. And the world is changing and evolving. To the chair, as you're sit on the board of the UBCM, could we ask for a status? Like, what's their progress report? Like, I mean, they've got the government's responding. What's UBCM's response back to them?
We can. That would be what you would get.
We would just get their response.
You would get that response until there actually has been movement on the file. So we can always also send a query to UBCM, but it's likely that they would acknowledge and give us the background of the resolutions that have been received and the provincial response on the file. So we should do that, and then at least we have that documented, and then also consider the fall submission timeline. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would make a motion that we send a query to UBCM, but we also copy the Interior as well as AVICC through the Couchin, so that then they'll start doing the same. And maybe it will have that bit of a snowball effect, and then we can actually start getting some answers back.
Okay, so let's just deal with the resolution.
Yep.
Or the motion.
The motion is to send a query to UBCM on the status of the change to the Advertisement Act, as well as my motion will include sending a copy of our query to the other organizations that have made motions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and then I can give staff, I'll give you the UBCM actual resolution numbers and all that when I'm in tomorrow, and then we can reference it because it is in their database. So that's that motion. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. And then I'm looking for a motion that we submit something to the AVICC as well. Okay, so that we send this resolution forward to the AVICC is moved by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. And we have that in front of us. Thank you for providing it. We might change the heading, though. We'll find something. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously as well. Thank you very much, Ms. Santowski. Okay, moving on to our next delegation this evening. We have the Capital Regional District Bylaw 4225 and Ms. Gail Hall presenting this evening.
Gail Hall, 2517 Sooke River Road. Thank you for the opportunity to bring my concerns before Council. CRD Bylaw 4225 is a bylaw to regulate the use of parks and trails and came into effect on March 14, 2018. In one spot, the bylaw states that a person with care and control of a dog in a regional park must have the dog on a leash at all times in regional parks that are listed in Schedule C. Schedule C lists the following: Iam Creek, C2C Regional Park, Sooke Hills Wilderness Park, Sooke Potholes Regional Park, and the Galloping Goose Regional Trail in its entirety. Those are the ones that they've listed from the District of Sooke. The list that they've put in Schedule C has 11 parks listed, and 5 are Sooke's parks. So we're only one short of having half of all parks where on-leash is the law. For the most part, these are large parks and make up most of our useful walking areas. The loss of the potholes hits the hardest for most dog owners. We've lost a special place where dogs enjoy dogs, friends share times of renewal, folks make new friends, walkers act as caretakers, put out abandoned campfires, see that tourists find the way they're going, and the world seemed a perfect place. Large dogs need to run to remain healthy and, yes, happy. They have been singled out by the CRD as a threat to the park and to humanity. I was told by a member of CRD staff that complaints have come in from bikers. He informed me that the bikers like to practice for their races. He also stated that there were no restrictions on these bicycles and their riders. Is this fair? With the current trend of creating all small lots in Sooke, the loss of areas like the potholes will remove the opportunity for folks to exercise for the health of both the owners and their dogs. We ask your help, Madam Mayor, as our representative at the CRD Parks Committee and at the CRD board table. We ask that you point out the magnitude of the area that's been taken from Sooke as a free range compared to other municipalities. We ask that you invite the CRD folks to come and explain to us their reasons for the decisions that were made. I wonder, would it be possible to work in some kind of a schedule so that dogs off-leash could have their place to run? Would it be possible when fall and winter are upon us that the potholes are then forgotten for us to return to our bit of heaven? Personally, I'm a potholes dog walker of more than 30 years. It seems both unnecessary and unfair that this action has been taken. My friends, both personal and canine, believe there's an answer somewhere, and we would very much like to find that answer, and we believe that working together we will have the ability to do this, because it's made an awful difference to a lot of people's lives. And there's one right there. Another one right there. So I'm hoping that we can find some way to fix this.
So one thought, so I was advised that the regional trail has always been on leash, and it was this year where they did the amendments and then started a bit of enforcement there, is on asking, like within our own parks, our dogs' policy is that dogs are under effective control, which means that they're off leash. I mean, they're not on leash, but they're under effective control, so they're off their leash. But not completely loose because they're under effective control. Anyway, I think you all understand what I'm trying to say. Is the potholes, I think the marker there is 49. I think for the kilometer marking, it's 49 or 50. Was that is to put a notice of motion forward, and the CRD process, it goes to committee, and then it gets debated at committee, referred up to the board. So we could put a notice with motion forward to the committee at the regional parks, and then request perhaps that from marker 50 upwards that it would be dogs under effective control. Or 49. Whatever I don't know what, it would be weird, and not weird, but if we had 38 to 42 is effective, and then 42, it would be a bit more, I think, difficult. But if you had a point where they could actually have a sign and say, then dogs are, from this point onwards to the balance of the goose, are under effective control, then everybody would know, and it's not just a section in between, it's like the end.
Is there anything that you know that we might not know as to why this, all of a sudden, they have to be on leash? I mean,
from what because I sent a query through, I'll turn to Councillor Pearson, and I'm just going to find my response that I got from staff on this while I'm looking for that. I'll look that up. Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Through the chair to the delegation, Ms. Hall. I couldn't agree with you more. I think the surprise was the sign went up. I happen to be married to a law-breaking citizen every day.
I'm looking at one.
Yeah, and I have 3 little dogs, and they go on that trail virtually every day, and they start at the old pole yard, and they walk to Todd Creek. So I don't think it's an issue. I really think that we need to get a handle on where this came into place and why it came into place. Because AM Creek and the Sea to Sky green space and all of that, where dogs have roamed freely forever, are also named in that bylaw. So I think we need a presentation from CRD to understand what the rationale was behind it. So I would make a motion through the chair to ask CRD to come to us and give us a presentation on their logic of how they came to this.
Second.
Okay, so we'll ask CRD's, probably park staff, to present on the dog policy. So that's moved, right? Yeah, moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. So here's just what I received. I sent a query to both the chair of the Parks Committee and then as well to the staff member. So the chair replied. So it's just so these all group. He said that extra funds, we put extra money in the budget this year for bylaw enforcement in regards to dog issues. There's been a growing number of complaints about dogs, and technically the galloping goose is on leash. And so that was that. And then from staff, it was, here's some background about dogs at the potholes. In 2010, the park management plan was approved by the board. It included a statement about dogs on leash and on trail as a year-round restriction. Regional park staff had been waiting until the adjacent C2C corridor began to open before they started rolling out messages about restrictions for both parks. Park regulations also needed updating. The board approved the changes to parks regulations in February 18. An amendment to the regional parks regulation bylaw was approved that included updates to areas within the regional park system where the leash regulations are in place, and Sooke potholes was on that list. In early 2018, staff installed regulatory signs that included a symbol indicating that dogs must be leashed, and similar signs have been installed in the C2C and on the goose. To date, park officers have written one warning for a dog off leash on April 27th near the potholes, and enforcement staff had been directed to seek voluntary compliance with the new leash regulations to only issue tickets in cases where repeated requests to comply have been ignored. Generally, the feedback our enforcement staff are getting is that the public is disappointed with the new rules but understanding of why they're in place. Based on the information, just reading the letter. Based on the information you provided, staff have been reminded that when directing the public to regional parks where they're off leash, that these parks should be in geographic proximity to where the conversation is taking place. So for the potholes, it would be the Kapur, East Sooke, Roach Cove, Matheson Lake Regional Parks, and then they listed off the Pets and Parks website link there.
I don't even know where the Kapur one is. Does somebody in here know where it is? Oh, at the end of the goose. Oh, well, that's a short distance, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have to get a bicycle.
No, but it encourages drive. So I think what we can do then is we'll get the request then, and then following that presentation, then look at making an appropriate notice of motion based on the questions and what we learn at that presentation. Maybe that would be the right course of action. Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and to Ms. Hall. I'm an owner of a very large dog, at one time 255 pounds. And
he needs to run.
So I follow a number of the media sites, and there have been a number of problems in other areas where dogs that were off leash, have viciously attacked another dog, and there's been thousands of dollars in vet bills. At the same time, I think it's incumbent that we recognize that there's a need to accommodate those who have dogs that want to run them loose. So and I also wanted to speak to your comment about the bikers. And I'm thinking in terms of the Sooke potholes. My husband and I used to ride that from 48 basically up to Kapur, up to 56 to the end almost on a daily basis. And virtually from about kilometer 49, which has the walkway down to that parking lot that they've now opened up where the campground used to start, nobody walks it.
That's right.
And if we have a problem, it's usually bicyclists who are training, and they just about take out anybody who's walking on the goose. So I think there's a couple of things that have been raised here, and it's unfortunate that there's sort of been a sweeping decision in terms of enforcement without having some kind of conversation or dialogue with our community. Because Sooke, the people of Sooke are the people who really do use it. When we go up the goose, they're all Sooke people from Sooke, very rarely outside of the summer months. Right. So I certainly support something, and I also think that the comments Ms. Hall has made about the bicyclists, we've seen people nearly get hit, and I'm not sure if people have been hit as they're racing and they're training. They have no regard for the safety of children, animals, or adults. So I think that Ms. Hall's raised a number of things that I would like the CRD speak to, because I think there is a way to accommodate both groups.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All of you and all of everybody that's here.
No, that's great. So I'll call the question on the motion then. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. And thank you, Ms. Hall, for bringing this forward tonight. Okay, so moving on into tonight's agenda, our next item up is 8.1, the wastewater capacity and condition overview with Stantec Engineering, please. You just need to push the button. Perfect, thank you.
Good evening. Okay, I'm Sean Swarbrick, and I'm with Stantec Consulting. Stantec have been working with the operators of the Sooke Sanitary Sewer System since its inception in 2006, 2007. And our primary role has been assisting in in planning of capital upgrades as they're required to bring on additional development into the system. So I'm going to take you guys briefly through. I realize we've got a busy agenda tonight. Sorry. How do we do? Sorry, what? Sorry? Which one is this? It's just off. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just take you guys through a quick overview of the system, what infrastructure is involved, and what areas are serviced by the sewer at this time. We will then go through a quick review of the collection system's capacity, what's actually left in terms of a percentage in the system to provide additional capacity for other developments, and a similar high-level overview for the treatment plant too. So system overview, the construction was completed in early 2006. It included approximately 24 kilometers of gravity mains, 6 kilometers of low-pressure sewer mains, 3 sanitary lift stations, which was at West Coast Road, Helgeson, and Sooke Road, and associated force mains, 3 kilometers. Since that time, the district has taken over the operation of 3 additional pump stations. That's at Mariners Village, Prestige Hotel, and Sun River Estates. Hopefully you guys can see in the red dashed line indicates what areas are within the sewer serviced area at this time. And the main pump stations are listed too: Helgeson Road, Sun River, Sooke Road, Mariners Village, West Coast Road, Prestige, and the wastewater treatment plant is on West Coast Road down in the bottom left of your screen. So this graphic is essentially taken from our digital model, and our digital model uses SANSYS, the modeling software. And the piping, as you can see, is all the gravity mains that make up the sewer system. To give you a brief overview, there's essentially 2 trunk mains that work in Sooke. One main system comes from Sun River, and that's pumped through to Sooke Road at the bottom there at Belle Vista Place. It's pumped up the hill, and then it runs by gravity from approximately Otter Point Road, and then it runs down to West Coast Road Lift Station. And from West Coast Road, it is pumped up Maple Avenue South to an easement, and at that easement, it then runs west across to West Coast Road and to the treatment plant. And that's one of the main trunks. The second main trunk takes in the Helgeson Road area, French Road, Grant Road, and that flows by gravity down to the same easement on Maple Avenue South. So pretty much the whole of Sooke at this time goes through an easement from Maple Avenue South across to West Coast Road. And there's the outlier there, Errington Estates on the west side too. I want to give you guys an overview of the model and how we prepare it and how we've constructed it. We've taken the record drawings that we had during the construction, and we've made a physical representation, so all the pipe size and the pipe slopes and various things. So that's how we can then actually model a hydraulic flow through the system. And then we've loaded it based on theoretical loading, based on the amount of people and an estimate of sewage flow per day, per person. Then we apply a peaking factor to that because it tends to peak in the mornings and in the evenings when people are having their dinner and having their breakfast. And then we also will have an allowance for stormwater infiltration into the system. And that's called an inflow and infiltration allowance. So all that comes together, and that's how we come up with the theoretical flow. We also did a review in 2016 which took flow data from, there's only one area in the system that we have a flow meter that we can actually check empirically against the theoretical at this time, and that's at the inflow into the treatment plant. And so we did that review in 2016, and it proved out quite close the theoretical against the actual. So we have, if you can see here, most of the green areas, I realize it's not showing up all that well, but the green areas are pipes that have very low flow as a percentage of their capacity. So everything you see there in green is pipes that you're not going to have to worry about at any point in the future. It's like cul-de-sacs or branch lines that are never going to hit their capacity. There are a few trunk mains or a few sections of the main trunks that will hit their capacity first. So we've identified them as bottlenecks, and if you can see there is, okay, I think the laser point is here. So I have number 1 is on the easement, and that's running at, the model shows it right now to be running at approximately 65% full, and that's at peak wet weather flow. So that's the worst case that we see right now, and that's in the easement there. We have another bottleneck on Maple Avenue South, which is running at 55%. Gatewood Avenue, similar, 55%. And there is a line on West Coast Road 2, which is running at 60%. So that's kind of gives you guys an idea of where the capacity is at this point in the system. You're running at worst case 65%. So that's the collection system. In the treatment plant, hands up, I'm not a treatment plant engineer, but I can talk high level to it. So when it comes to treatment plant design, essentially you're designing for 2 situations, for solids flow, for solid waste, and for hydraulic flow. So the design flow conditions that the treatment plant is designed for was a 20-year projection in 2005. And I'll explain these acronyms. ADWF is an average dry weather flow, and that's 3 megaliters per day. That's a good indication of, that's what you'll see during the dry summer months when there's very little stormwater coming into the system. What that is representative of is what solid waste does the plant need to treat. The peak dry weather flow is indicative of if you had a tourist season or something like that where you had spikes during the summer, where you had to treat X amount more. That would be 3.8 megaliters per day, but that's something you could only treat for maybe a week or so, and then you'd be really pushing the plant's capacity. And the peak wet weather flow is 6.9 megaliters a day, and that's representative of the worst case scenario in a storm event in the winter. What can it treat? And most of that, as you can see, as average dry weather flow being 3 megaliters per day, it's over double that. So we're treating a lot of stormwater coming into the system, but it's designed to do that. So with that being the design projections, in 2016, as I mentioned, we did a quick review of the flow data. So the average dry weather flow in 2016 was 1.54 megaliters per day. And Dan's mentioned to me that it's actually about more like 1.7 now. So the solids handling capability of the plant, you have a lot more left. So, but we haven't really discussed buy-in. So the plant, obviously we have the existing people that are on the plant, but we also have developers that bought in capacity, and those are we've included that in all the modeling that we've done up to that point. So the previous slide had the buy-ins, developers' capacity included in those capacities. So this 1.54 doesn't actually include that. So when you actually add in the buy-ins and everything, you're more at 2 megaliters per day. So you're more at 60% of the solids handling capability. Okay, that's the good news. The issue we are finding at the moment is the wet weather flows are higher than we would expect to see. So that's indicative of high inflow into the system from stormwater. I think if I can compare some of the design projections, we are expecting to see somewhere in the region of 3.9 megalitres per day, worst case for inflow and infiltration. Actually, we're seeing more like 5 at the moment in the worst case. So we're seeing about 20% more inflow and infiltration than we would have expected to see. So that being the case, we're working with the district staff to identify those areas. So the high inflow and infiltration has been experienced and it's causing operational challenges. The pictures that you see here on the right-hand side are recently taken, I believe they were taken last year. And you can see jets of water. The top one is very noticeable. A jet of water that's coming through. That's being spurted through one of the manhole barrels. The barrels are built on top of each other. And the joints between them, that's where that's where that water's coming through. And that's due to high groundwater. And it's going to be coming through like that pretty much for a large part of the winter months. So the district is working with a contractor to, they have identified a lot of these problem manholes. I'm in the process of rectifying them, sealing them. And once that is done, we've discussed a potential flow monitoring program to check essentially the levels of inflow after those fixes have been made, and also to help us refine our digital model too, to better reflect what's actually out there. So, I mean, just to summarize, collection system is running around 65%. The treatment plant, from a solids perspective, is running at around the same, 60 to 65%. But with the wet weather flows, we're having some issues that we're now looking to rectify. I think I do want to mention as well that it was a 20-year projection in 2005 to get us to 2025 horizon. But I think I'm right in saying that Sooke's growth has been a little higher growth rate than we might have expected to see at that time. So it may be something that we'll have to look at a little earlier than 2025 for a plant expansion. And a plant expansion would include essentially 2 of the large basins. We would add another basin in next to that, and that would increase the flow. And that's essentially the summary.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. So my understanding, like with the water entering, the stormwater entering the system, like it's not supposed to be doing that. Like the stormwater should be collected in the ditches and the like and diverted another way. So that's where we have discussed the RFP to have the various, and I think that's closed, and that's the work that, pardon me, you're referring to now that's taking place. But otherwise, when that's done, we should see that 20% unanticipated flows decrease in theory, unless there's another problem, because the stormwater shouldn't go into the system, correct?
Stormwater is always going to make its way into the system somehow.
Okay.
Just the percentage that we're seeing is more than we expected. So you're absolutely right that once the manholes that we show here are sealed, we should see a big decrease in that. And if we don't, then it's coming in through somewhere else. But I think if you look at that, it's actually, once you work out the numbers, it's a significant flow per day in water that's coming through these manholes. But it still finds its way in somehow, just not at the percentages that we're seeing.
So if these are fixed, it could be like could be a break in a pipe somewhere, and then the groundwater is entering in some other area?
There could be a leaky pipe, John, or something like that.
Right.
It could also be cross connections. You could have roof leaders tied into the sanitary system.
I see. Okay.
So there are a number of ways, but this is the first port of call, if you like, for resolving it because it's so visual, and then we can assess after that too.
I guess will we have to wait till the rain season starts again to see if because this work is happening now, but with the drier weather, like it won't be until more the fall and the rain starts again that we're going to notice if it's changed, right? Mr. Skidmore?
Your Worship, that's exactly what we're doing now. Is the rain has stopped, the infiltration has stopped itself. As soon as the rain comes back, we'll be able to go in and seal these. We can only seal them when they're actually flowing.
Oh, I see.
We can't seal them if they're not flowing. So we have to wait until they flow, and at that point we can start sealing them. Our plan is to actually seal the ones that we found and locate any other ones, then do some more camera work. We have done some. We haven't seen any issues in the camera work at this point. And then after that, we'll do some smoke testing of the system and find out if there's any cross connections through there.
Okay.
So it's a three-stage approach. After that, we can do flow monitoring and calibrate Sean's model.
Okay. So what is our next step in this? Is that we would get, council will receive reports on this as that work continues, but in meanwhile, I'm also hearing that we may need to look at our sewer capital replacement budget and look at that timeline.
We have added that into the 5-year, and actually
Okay.
this year we do have some capital work on our main lines.
Okay. That's good. Thank you. It's all well looked after. Mr. Blackhall, then I'll go to Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to add, we did apply for and receive a grant as well we can use for the flow monitoring when we get to that stage. So
Oh, excellent.
it's 15 up to 15,000, I believe.
Well, it certainly helps the
Yep.
sewer fund because that's where all of these things are coming out of the sewer operating funds. So it'll help with that that cost there. Councillor Ray, then Pearson, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure really where to direct the question. Now that we've had this presentation, and thank you very much, I just would like to know what the next steps are in this process because I'd like to start making some decisions about expansion of the sewer system. So I understand this is sort of what we've been waiting for, is to determine the capacity that we're at. And what I'm hearing is that with the buy-ins from the developers, we're at about 65%.
In the collection system.
In the collection
Yeah.
system. And so is there something else that we need to look at?
The only other thing is the treatment plant, and it's the hydraulic flows, like the water that's coming in is
Right.
causing problems for the operational staff, which is what we're dealing with. But once that is dealt with, then theoretically that frees up additional space right in the system. It's a lot of stormwater that's coming in that we don't
Right.
need.
Okay.
It's once that's alleviated, then it's freed up capacity for use elsewhere.
Okay. And it gives us a truer picture as to exactly how much is going through.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. And it's muchly appreciated finally get this report, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you for your presentation. So a couple of technical questions for me. So I heard Mr. Skidmore say that you have to wait for it to start raining again. What's the process of sealing those manholes?
Dan actually might be able to talk to that a little better than I can.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Pearson. How we do it is it's a chemical that they use. It's very similar to foam insulation. So they'll go inside the manhole, they'll drill through the manhole and inject the solution on the outside of the manhole. It'll fill the void on the outside of the manhole and follow the water train into the manhole, sealing it from the outside in.
And so I guess we can't go there and just how many manholes do we have and what's the cost per manhole?
We haven't established a cost. It all depends on how big the void is behind, but it can be anywhere between $500 and $2,500 per manhole. And we have approximately 8 at this point that we've located.
Okay. So I guess my question is going back, thank you, Mr. Skidmore, to the chair. So if there's a process on that, so I'm assuming they're leaking, on each riser, right? They're leaking through that gap. So we don't have a set way that we just go in there and seal those from the inside. We have to go around the outside.
You actually seal it from the inside out. So you go inside the manhole, drill from the inside to the outside. In the first picture you see there, it's actually leaking where the joint is on the pipe coming in, not the barrel riser.
Right.
So you have to actually get in around the outside of the pipe. Digging it up and repairing it from the outside is very costly, especially if it's in a roadway. Mm. Sealing it from the inside is the easiest and most cost-effective way to do it.
In my former life, we sealed them with a liner.
They're supposed to be sealed with a liner, that's correct. But
Okay.
if it's deteriorated or was installed incorrectly or the grout is broken from vibration, it can happen.
Okay. Another question on a technical note. So the flow meters, so we have 3 pump stations. Now we've got a couple of extras. So those pumps in the run time, are those not, because we only have 1 flow meter, which you said is right at the plant. So we don't have runtime data on those pumps at capacity?
We do have runtime, and we can calculate the flows based on pump runtimes. That's correct.
Okay.
And yeah, when it rains, we can tell it's running a lot longer.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is, it seems like there's a bit of a guessing game on knowing where the flows are coming from. So I guess we've done the study now. We know which manholes are leaking. So now the process is to go fix them, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we just got to wait for the rain. so we can fix them.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Anything else from members of council? Okay, so a motion to receive the report, please. Moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Thank you for your time and the presentation today. Okay, so we have item 10.1, our bylaw section now, bylaw number... Oh, pardon me. Sorry. Public question and comment period. Sorry about that. For any item on tonight's agenda, please. We just require your name, address, the item you're to speak to.
Sorry, I just thought it might be worthwhile to give a reminder that nobody can speak to the reconsideration item as that public hearing has been closed.
Right, okay, everything but the public hearing that closed last meeting. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Derek Lewis, 5526 Sooke Road. I'm speaking to page 16 of your agenda, which is the minutes from the last meeting. Mrs. Lewis was here 2 weeks ago to speak to bylaw infractions, multiple bylaw infractions at 5536 Sooke Road. Made quite an impassioned plea. I watched the video, 8 minutes, she got an extended time. And I was very, very, very disappointed, respectfully, in my elected officials that sat there and didn't even give her the courtesy of a response to her letter. Ms. Bernard also came up, another respected citizen, asked, and all that she got was a thank you very much, and she sat down. So I'm here to ask council, what is the plan in the ongoing bylaw infractions at 5536 Sooke Road? As a co-owner of the neighboring property and a resident next door, I would like to know what the plan is and the timeline, please.
Okay, maybe I'll ask can I put our staff to respond to that?
Well, unfortunately, council isn't able to give you any more detail at this time. It, as you know, is a legal matter that we are dealing with, and when new information becomes available, we can share that with you.
Okay, through your worship, can I get an ETA, because this has been going on a long time, and there's going to be more litigation probably if it keeps going on. And we deserved some sort of an answer as a timeline. What is it, the next election? 5 years, 10 years? I think there's a reasonable time we should expect to hear something. And I'd also like to point out that we got a letter from staff that said that council had directed them to look at larger bylaw infractions in the Cecinas area for zoning. There's no public meeting that I found where that was discussed, so I can only assume in my discussions with your corporate officer that that was an in-camera discussion. That means that that's part of that in-camera discussion has been released, so I would like to know if council is going to rise and report on that in-camera meeting.
We can't rise and report on a matter that has legal attached to it. So Ms. Machado is correct. There just isn't anything more that I can say about it at this time. I totally appreciate the frustration that you're experiencing. And I have to leave it at that. We're here to represent the district as a whole, and the last thing I want to do is breach confidence.
Yes.
I can't do that. I'm sorry, Mr. Lures, but there's nothing more that we can say at this
I do
time.
respect that. However, if you've written a letter and staff has given direction to us from a council direction, that in part I would think that some sort of rise and report in part could come out of that meeting. We had Ms. Hall here speaking about dogs not being allowed in Nahum Creek Park. But all day today, there's been dump trucks with boulders the size of small houses being dumped within 100 feet or less of that creek that dogs aren't supposed to go to. So somebody needs to do something.
Yep, and we'll take that into consideration, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Other speakers on tonight's agenda, please.
Ellen Norris, 5526 Sooke Road. I'd like to speak on the Seniors Youth Facility Reserve account. I see that council is looking at going through the casino revenue reserve fund bylaw. And I was looking through my Sooke Community Center Advisory Committee minutes, and over, it's seniors groups sharing space with youth groups, all the way through here, $150,000 to go to the Sooke Community Hall to repair it. Through this whole, all our discussion was on that. And I don't see how, without a bylaw being written or without something written to say that this money goes to the seniors, and and where's it going? Like, is it going to do building? Who's going to manage it? Is it to rent a space? Who's going to manage that? Who's answerable? Who's the seniors group? And what happened to the youth and arts groups and all these other groups that also came forward? And I don't feel that this is proper. I feel that it's improper, especially, and disrespectful to the Sooke Community Centre Advisory Committee that met, and we did a lot of work, and it was inclusive. It was inclusive, and this is excluding all the other groups that also were attending. So if there's no bylaw, then I think this committee should be opened up again, and there should be discussion. I don't think this money should be flowing through casino revenue funds and to Sooke seniors. And it might be an election issue. Seniors, I'm a senior myself, and I wouldn't be asking for the money when I didn't know where it was going to be going. And I don't expect that you should be giving it to somebody when you don't know where it's going either, or how it's going to be used. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lures. Other comments on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing no one further, we'll move on then into our bylaw section, 10.1. Bylaw number 695, zoning amendment bylaw for 6829 Grant Road. And we'll turn this over to staff, please.
Good evening, Council, Your Worship. I'm here today to present on the rezoning of 6829 Grant Road. The subject site is located immediately adjacent to the town center OCP area to the east, agricultural land reserve to the south, Grant Road to the north, and Haywood and Stonehearth Lane to the west. The site's bisected in an east-westerly direction by Knott Brook, and is just under 5 acres in size. There's an existing residence on the site, shown in the small image on the slide, and some accessory buildings located at the highest elevation of the site, which is near the center of it. This is an ortho photo of the site. This first image is a view looking southeast from Haywood Road, and as you can see, the site slopes gently downward upward from Grant Road to the existing homestead at the center of the site. On the top right also depicts gentle sloping towards Grant Road to the northwest, downward from the homestead. This is an image of the stone hearth fireplace structure, and behind it you can see a portion of the existing residence. This is an image just of a fairly large, lovely tree in the center of the south portion of the site. Also, you can see in the background the existing residence. And in that, actually, you can also see how it's sloping downwards towards Eustis Road. And this last image is taken from Eustis Road West, looking east, along an informal pathway. The site's currently zoned small-scale agricultural. The applicant's proposing to split zone the site to small lot residential for the northern portion, shown in a light green in the map, and medium-density multifamily residential on the southern portion, shown in beige. The RM2 zone, which is the beige portion on the south, allows for duplexes, cluster housing, townhouses, apartment buildings, and assisted living, while the R3 zone permits minimum lot sizes of 350 square meters, duplexes on lots of over 600 square meters, and secondary suites. The proposed increase in density on the site is consistent with adjacent residential development. You can see in the zoning map that it is surrounded by R3 on the west side, and the orange and peach colors are RM2 and RM4. And then there's some more across the street of RM2. The site will provide 2 at minimum 2 distinct residential forms and result in approximately 50 units represented by approximately 34 multi-units and 16 single-family lots. The applicant's also offering cash in lieu in affordable housing in the amount of $500 per unit, or approximately $25,000. Knott Brook crosses the northern portion of the site and requires a 13.5-meter setback from top of bank on either side of the brook for protection. Within the southern portion of that protected area, an urban walking trail will be dedicated in order to facilitate connection to the existing Knott Brook pathways to the west and east of the site. And as a result, the site will be dedicating approximately 11.5% park. Access will be extended from Haywood Road, Stonehearth Lane, and Eustis Road. Road dedications are proposed for all of the above, as well as potential dedication along Grant Road for future widening. Eustis Road will be built to connect through to Eustis Road West. The TIA concluded, that's the Transportation Impact Assessment, concluded that no further upgrades would be required as a result of this proposal. The dedications will be addressed at the time of subdivision. The site is within the sewer specified area, and water is provided by the Capital Regional District. Rainwater stormwater management is controlled from a detention containers that will occur through subsurface detention systems on all newly created lots and in the common area for the RM2 site to the south. This application is supported by existing policies and bylaws, and the proposal aligns with the surrounding neighborhood. Therefore, staff is recommending that Council grant first and second reading of this bylaw, schedule public hearing in accordance with Local Government Act, and prior to adoption require that the owner enter into a 219 covenant to address parks and trails dedications and construction, road dedications, and affordable housing contributions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Pearson. I just have a couple of questions. In terms of that earlier slide with the features that were pointed out with the large tree and the stone fireplace, what happens to those items? Are they retained and somehow incorporated into the development?
Through your worship, that's yet to be determined. I can't say for sure for the tree at this point. It is a nice large tree, and there is a requirement for common space in RM2, amenity space of like 10% for the site, so potentially they could utilize that in that portion of the site. The stone hearth is not on the site, it's outside of it. So it's right on Stonehearth Lane in that little round green space.
I see.
Potentially, if there was ever a need or want for a road connection loop through, maybe it could be relocated. I don't know what the plan is for that.
I see. Okay, thank you. Councillor Pearson, then Ray, please.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Ms. Campbell, for your presentation. I think this is a appropriate development. It's going to improve connectivity in our downtown. It's going to give us a mix of residential that I think is appropriate in the area. And it's infill to our sewer area. We're not adding to our sewer specified area, so I think it's a very viable project. So I would move first and second reading.
Okay, first and second have been moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ray, was it? Okay. And okay, Councillor Ray then?
Yes, thank you. I'm very pleased to see this come forward. I also think it is essential to our road network, pushing Eustis through to Caldwell. I think that's been something Council's looked at for some time. So I won't belabor it. I agree with what Councillor Pearson has said. So.
Excellent. Anything from anyone else? Call a question then. All those, Councillor Parkinson?
Through you, Your Worship, just in regards to the parking issue, because there is always parking issues within our town, I just wanted to make sure that there would be sufficient parking with additional parking spots. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I'll call a question then. All those in favor of first and second? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. The second part is then that a public hearing be scheduled for zoning amendment bylaw 695 in accordance with the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And the last part is that prior to final adoption of the zoning bylaw, that the owner be required to enter into a Section 219 covenant, registered in priority of all other charges on title for parks and trails and construction, road dedication, and as stated there. Someone moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Berger. Any further discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. The next one is item 10.2. There is a replacement page, but we're basically here to adopt this development permit delegation bylaw number 705. Move adoption by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Anything further on adoption? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. 10.3, zoning amendment bylaw number 707, 6929 West Coast Road for the Prestige Hotel Marina, please.
Sorry, your council, your worship, I'm here again to present on recommendation for rezoning of a water lot at 6929 West Coast Road. The subject site's a water lot in Sooke Harbor, just north of Whiff and Spit, and adjacent to and leased by the Prestige Hotel located on West Coast Road. The Prestige Hotel is the applicant. You can see from the image above, and as most here are familiar, there is an existing District of Sooke boat launch. Does this have a laser pointer? Oh, sorry. Just south of the star. So the red star is where the future moorage would be, and also the floating dock and pier. This is the applicant is proposing to rezone the water lot depicted above from passive recreation, which is W1 in the zoning bylaw, to marina, which is W3, in order to develop a fuel station and private resort moorage for guests arriving by boat and or float plane. The Prestige has already been approved by the province for the foreshore lease and for a license of occupation for the area shown in the subject map above. It's the hatched area. The image on the lower right corner of the slide is a northeast view from the pier. That is the general location for the future moorage, so the cleared water area there. The OCP, the Official Community Plan, encourages economic development opportunities for water frontages such as marine-related retail, marine pub and hotels. It also encourages support of tourism commercial activities along the waterfront. The proposed marina zoning allows for complementary uses such as marina, boat ramp, and other associated facilities. This is a sketch of the moorage. It's proposing approximately 18 new berths, along with a ramp and locked gate. And then the fuel station would be that rectangular box on the lower part of the screen. The addition of the new berths initiates the need for 6 new parking stalls in the upland site, for which a development variance permit has been submitted and will be before council when this rezoning application goes to public hearing. Beyond a variance for parking, the proposed zoning meets all other requirements. Staff supports the proposed zoning and therefore recommends that council give first and second reading and that council schedule a public hearing for the zoning amendment bylaw. Oh, in addition, the applicant is here, represented by the General Manager, Jacob Cramp, if you have any questions for him.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Campbell. In the referral documents, there's a comment from Vancouver Island Health Authority in terms of the concerns of noise, neighborhood concerns around noise and air quality as relates to floatplane traffic, and they suggest the district consider this impact and welcome further dialogue and the like. So I'm just wondering how we may be able to get some information from their experiences. It looks like the first two, the comment would be addressed to the improvement, I can't speak tonight, would be addressed through prior zoning and development approval processes, but the third bullet is not caught there or any mention of. So it's just how can we work with the neighborhood and with the Prestige as we go forward on these things.
I did speak to the person that gave the comments. They had said they usually will work with the timing for when float planes can come in. So there'd be a restricted timeline throughout the day and might even be days of the week. That would happen through a process, and they would also work with us on those timelines. So, and that's typical practice.
Okay. Councillor Ray, then Berger, then Parkinson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through to Ms. Campbell. So you showed us a diagram there in terms of an outline in the water, but it doesn't really show us how that design is relative. I mean, I can see it now from here, but my concern is for the neighbors to the east of the Prestige Hotel, and just what aspects of this area would have the float planes. Like, do we have a sense of what kind of impact that's going to have in terms of, the water in front of them?
Through Your Worship, so I think I hear two questions there.
Probably.
So your concern around distance between the north docks and this future dock, and also where the tie downs would be for the plane. So for the first question, the construction. So we don't have jurisdiction over development permit, building permits for these types of, for this kind of construction in the water. That is handled at the provincial level, and they address distance and separation and whatever the size of boats that need to get between the wharfs or piers. So regarding the airplane tie down, actually that may be a question that Mr. Cramp could potentially answer, because I don't have an answer for that.
I'd have to get the details from Al.
Okay, so we could provide that before the public hearing in a memo to council.
Councillor Berger, please, then Parkinson.
Yes, thank you. My comments were similar to Councillor Ray's, the first part with respects to when you're looking at that screen, and I can appreciate the fact that it is just a diagram and it's hard to look at widths and stuff. Just where our boat launch comes out, it looks like it's going to be quite a maneuvering act to get around to get back out. But again, I guess we'll have to rely on the province who measures distances and so on. What concerns me the most, though, as much as I love the idea of the new recreational use by adding float planes in our harbor, I have a real concern that this does not meet the parking requirements. We have such a huge issue with the boat launch and the hotel with parking currently, and I remember last time when this came to our table, the discussion was that people would be arriving by float plane and by boat and there shouldn't be parking, but it is such a disaster there currently that with not meeting the parking requirements that are required with this new added space, I don't think I can personally support it.
Councillor Parkinson.
I think it would be a great addition having, through Your Worship, I think it's a great addition having this feature at the Prestige. I know that when you're for concern about noise, I actually perform weddings down there quite frequently, and I know that our boat launch is so noisy. It's unbelievable, the noise that comes from that all day long on the weekends. So I don't think that there'll be added. The noise will be still at the same level. It's loud there, regardless. So I just think it's a great addition to have that there, and I will be supporting it, and I would like to move first reading.
Okay, I think we can do them together. So it'll be first and second reading. You're good with that? Okay, that's moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Okay, any comments, Councillor Pearson? Then Loggins?
Yeah, I like the idea of developing something on the water. I just want to, I guess, before when we get to through the chair to our planner, Ms. Campbell, again. I think we have a moratorium on the harbor that we haven't heard back from that. We sent a letter out, no more development on the waterfront. Is this in that? We've sent that request through to the province.
We didn't put it out. The South Nation did, and we received notice that there was a 5-year on any docks along the harbor, but then that all flows through to the province, and they've granted approval for this. And my understanding was that having one centralized place where there's control and that the fuel and everything is in a controlled environment is better than having many small ones and the concern of spillage of fuel and contaminating the marine environment. So in this way, there would be the one that was controlled.
And my question back through to the planner, or to Ms. Campbell, head of planning, is that sometime in the last year that came back for renewal, that 5-year renewal, and then we actually brought it back to council.
It's like September,
and we haven't
I think.
had a report back on the province's response to that, because we actually agreed to that 5-year moratorium, and then we had second thoughts about it, and we brought it back, but we haven't had a response back that I'm aware of. So, anyways, I support the overall development of the harbour.
Not that I see, but again, it's under their jurisdiction. So if they were going to take that into consideration, they would not have granted the approval for this, and they've already done so.
Okay.
Councillor Loggins, then, Ray?
Thank you. In principle, I support this. I can see where there'd be some concerns, especially around the float plane traffic. Personally, I enjoy the sound of float planes, and they're only there during daylight hours, but I can definitely see how that concern would arise. And one thing to consider as well is that while they would be docking, likely on the outside edge of that dock, but while they'd be docking at that end of the harbor, they're going to be taxiing into the harbor and also taking off into the harbor depending on the wind direction. So they're going to be using that whole area. It's not just going to be the area in front of the Prestige. So I think my question through you to staff might be if it's possible to, this is probably too much work already, but when we do the public hearing, we advise certain people just within the area that are going to be affected, but really it's going to be everyone in the harbor that's affected. So is it possible to send out the notice of public hearing to other houses along the harbor?
How would the public hearing in this case be handled?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Logan's, any public hearing is required to have the newspaper notification. So for 2 weeks, 2 consecutive weeks, the notice of the public hearing will appear in the printed newspaper at the Sooke Mirror. So that is the way that the kind of word gets out to the general public. I would be hesitant to veer from our required process just to notify residents within a certain radius of the development. So, might create expectations moving forward for other developments.
Councillor Ray?
Yes, through your worship, to staff. But first I'd like to respond to the latter comment, to Councillor Logan's comments. And that is that I think we're in a bit of a unique situation. I certainly appreciate what the rules are in terms of the 100 meters when you're on land. But we're not on land, we're on water, and there are people on the other side. So I'd like to, if the bylaw states that that's the only, if there's no wiggle room, then I understand it. But I think this is one of those cases where it's not your typical scenario where everybody's on land. It is, and I agree with Councillor Lopez. The planes will be taking on and off, and I too enjoy the float planes, but maybe not everybody else. The second thing to Ms. Campbell, you mentioned that there would be 6 parking spots. I'm sorry, but I don't see where they are located.
Through your worship. So the application before you is for rezoning for the water lot. There are implications that say parking will be required on the upland site of 6 additional stalls because of the number of berths. You have a development variance permit that will be before you at the public hearing after if the rezoning is granted. It will follow with the variance permit, and that will show if and where those 6 stalls would be. But they're coming for a variance because there is nowhere to put the 6 stalls.
Okay. Is it possible then, in terms of the flow plane, because my understanding is that flow planes can come and go right now, as they please.
Yep.
and that they have in the past, and then they've sort of tied up or landed near the spit, I think, and have had people enter and exit that way. So, I mean, it's an activity that already occurs. So perhaps that's just information for the public here, and is just how many and how often is expected. And then I think, should that question arise, but I think it's fair to say that that activity is currently allowed and can occur as desired. Right? Okay. Other comments from members of council at this time? All right, I'll call the question then. All those in favor of first and second? Opposed? Councillor Berger is opposed. The motion carries. And there is a part 2 to that, and that is that a public hearing be scheduled for zoning amendment bylaw number 707 in accordance with section 466.
Excuse me, Your Worship, you read those as a block. The motion was passed as a block.
I read first and second as a block.
Sorry.
Yeah. So would someone like to move the public hearing? Move public hearing by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Ray. Anything further on the public hearing? So as this stands, it's just as required by the law. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay. So 11.1, please, is the Kennedy Street South Drainage Project. And welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship. So during the 5-year financial plan discussions, Council approved a $100,000 budget for the Kennedy Street South Drainage Project. Staff, using the design that was provided during budget deliberations, received issued an RFQ and received 3 quotations for the Kennedy Street South Drainage Project. Plan contracting was the low bidder with a total bid price of $84,750 plus GST. And the other 2 quotations were Sparker Construction at $85,000 and Altera Construction at $92,349.50. So all 3 contractors submitted completed quotation forms and displayed the capacity and experience to complete the scope of work. Thus, the recommendation is based solely on the lowest price, and that's why staff recommends awarding the contract to Plan Contracting.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Just a question is, what exactly does this, can you just give an overview again of what this work is and what we're doing exactly?
So you'll see in the attachments, I attached a copy of the design drawings. So the purpose of the project is we have at the south tip of the paved extent of Kennedy Street South, it's a road right of way down a relatively steep embankment. And currently water comes from the roadside ditch under a driveway culvert, and then it enters a corrugated steel pipe that's actually above grade. It's kind of propped up through the grass, and it's rusty and corroded and doesn't carry water anymore. So water kind of runs down the bank without being controlled. Then at the bottom of the bank, there's a ditch system, which is also kind of in disrepair. So at the moment, water washes over the road and washes through the road base, and it's essentially washing away Water Street. So there's extensive alligator cracking. So yeah, we're trying to upgrade that as well as upgrade the top.
My understanding, from my recollection from the budget, is following this work, there would be a form of trail or a pedestrian access point to the water then?
Yes, that would be yes, Your Worship, that would be the second, it's included as this part of the job at the bottom section of the road. From the road to the beach access, we would be doing some clearing. Essentially, we'd be clearing like a 3 or 4 meter wide path, just so that in the following up this summer, we could also build a wood staircase from Water Street down to the beach access.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Councillor Ray, then Pearson, please.
I'd like to move the recommended action. Council.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Anything further? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. If you can let us know when the work will start and when it's finished, that'll be great, because I think the access to the water is really important, and it'd be nice to know that that has been finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, so then we have 11.4, which is the Parks and Environmental Services pickup truck. So this was before us recently, and now it's here for us to approve. So, Ms. Hooper, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. On May 14th, Council gave direction to staff to proceed with the purchase of a pickup truck, 1/2 ton extended cab pickup truck for the park services. This will accommodate day-to-day activities and add versatility to the fleet for maintenance and garbage collection. We posted a request for proposals as per the purchasing policy, and received only 2 bids. Those 2 bids were both from Suburban Motors for a 1/2 ton and Jenner Chevrolet, who could only give us a quote for a 3/4 ton equivalent pickup truck. Staff recommends that we approve Suburban Motors or Ford as a successful proponent, as it is both the low bid, and we currently have an existing Ford in our fleet. So having that consistency in the type of truck is also a benefit to the users who have to switch from trucks on a day-to-day basis. We also recommend that we increase to an EcoBoost engine, which is a V6 engine that will give us an increased fuel efficiency. Given the high gas prices and day-to-day operations, it's a good idea to go as fuel efficient as possible.
Excellent. What was the amount that we actually had forecasted for this?
We had a park budget equipment for $70,000. So $40,000 approximately would be for a vehicle, and then additional money for second mowers, blowers, etc.
Okay.
So there's it's within the budget.
Okay, perfect. Okay, sounds straightforward. I'm assuming it'll have our district logo and all the...
Correct. It will come as stock white, and then we'll decal it later.
Okay. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship to staff. So, the difference in the cost between the quote is for the addition?
Correct. The original quotes, so we could compare apples to apples, are listed as bullets 1 and 2.
Right.
And the additional cost of $750 is for the EcoBoost and that V6 engine.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearson?
Just a question through the chair. Thank you, Ms. Hooper, for the presentation. So, are we? Would we be or not? Wouldn't we be better off to have a 3/4 ton, or I don't know? Because we can haul more. I'm a truck guy. I'm thinking about a 3/4 ton as opposed to a 1/2 ton. And it's the same price.
Excellent question, through your worship. We did consider that. We are also concerned about the height of the truck. The 3/4 ton is a few inches taller, and when you're hauling garbage over the sides of trucks in traffic, having a shorter truck is very important. Also, we do have a diverse fleet as it is. We have a 1-ton truck as well as a 3/4 ton existing in the fleet. So diversity is a good thing sometimes.
Okay, I'll move the recommended action.
Moved and seconded. It's interesting that question was asked by Councillor Casper too. It's trucks and anyway. Yes. Yeah, it's having the appropriate sizing. Yes, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Or Councillor Berger is opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 11.2 is the Seniors Youth Facility Reserve Account. So we've had some conversation about the approval in principle that Council gave, and there was concerns of the bylaw or not having a bylaw, and so we had that asked previously, and there was some comment that there was a bylaw, but I'll just turn this over to our CAO, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So page 77 of the package is where we're at. At the last meeting, there was some question whether there was a bylaw for this purpose, and there isn't a separate bylaw. The funds are allocated out of the casino revenue reserve fund bylaw into a reserve account. So they're essentially an internal appropriation of those monies, which is fine. But what it doesn't do is then have any rigor or real stipulations around the use of those funds. So that's why we're bringing this back, because as staff, we think it is a good idea to add some more rigor to what these funds can and can't be used for. There's different ways to do that. I did check with the ministry on, here's the situation we got and what do you think? And they thought, to introduce a whole nother bylaw for this, not necessary. However, that's why we sort of got it drafted the way we do right now, as that we could just amend the casino reserve to include stipulations regarding the use of those allocated monies. However, a whole separate bylaw works as well. It really isn't going to create a whole bunch of extra work for us. So if council would rather have that change to actually direct staff to introduce a bylaw for the senior/youth reserve fund so that we can have some more accountability regarding the use of those monies, that's fine.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson, then Loggins and Pearson, please.
So, through your worship, I would like to move that council direct staff to prepare a bylaw to establish a reserve fund for the senior youth reserve, and that the money be placed to the credit of the reserve fund.
Okay, there's a motion, and it's seconded by Councillor Pearson, and that would be to establish the bylaw. Speaking to it, Councillor Parkinson?
I would like to see that it is a bylaw in that, in the community charter, it states that when you have the bylaw, that the funds that are put into that bylaw, into that fund, can only be used for that purpose, so that the money that we have put into the bylaw for the reserve fund for the senior youth center will be directed to that fund and cannot be used for other projects.
Okay, Councillor Loggins?
Thank you. I have a question about the entity receiving the funds, providing that does happen. I know this is in principle at this point, but what type of entity would be receiving these funds if it does go to the senior center? In terms of accountability, how would they be accountable for?
So we had at the last meeting talked about scheduling a committee of the whole, so we can talk about that with the groups and then we can get clarity on it. So unless we've received, staff have anything further, I'll just leave my comment at that, so that way we can hash out all the questions. But Mr. Blackhall, unless you have anything further?
Yep, thanks, Your Worship. I would say in the bylaw, there's some definitions built in there if council wishes, and the community wishes to have some idea of what kind of organization is going to get these funds. Of course, there's only we can only do certain things anyway under the charter, so there's that. But right now, the last report that came forward, I think, brought up the concept of the Sooke seniors group being the ones that, in principle, are allocated those funds. That's just in principle, of course. Though.
Right, and so I guess that's my question. I don't know the status of that group, and if they would, under this bylaw, be able to receive those funds. And perhaps that's a question for that cow, but that would be one of my concerns.
Yep. Councillor Pearson, then Ray?
Yes, through the chair. Thank you to our CAO. I would prefer a bylaw, given the cycle of where we're at. In October there could be potential be change. So I think we don't want to lose it, and I think a bylaw puts rigor around the process. So I would support it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ray?
Yes, I was not here for the council meeting on May 28th, and my apologies. I'm just wondering, reading this, it says that council approved in principle that the Sooke Seniors Drop-In Center and Affordable Seniors Housing Project be able to access the entire reserve account balance. Was there a discussion as part of that resolution that it would be a seniors youth Because what I'm reading here doesn't suggest that. I mean, it talks about consulting, but I'm just not sure, and I just want to raise it. I support it, obviously, but just to have clarity with the amount of money that is currently earmarked for the group.
It may also go back to a meeting. They provided materials, I think, in late December, and then there was a delegation perhaps in January where we talked about Lot A and giving approval in principle at that time, which we did. And at that time, there was the idea that it would be a seniors drop-in center, but also involve youth to access evenings and weekends, as well as other community groups as well. So that component was discussed at that time. That's my understanding. Councillor Berger, then Parkinson.
Yes, thank you. And just further to your comments to Councillor Ray, it was suggested too that they needed to have some sort of notion on behalf of the district that we would support entering into some sort of partnership with an affordable house. I believe Macola Housing and BC Housing was also mentioned too. So that's why it was in principle, so they could show other entities that they could potentially have these funds to build a larger space, so there could be programming space down the bottom and possible affordable seniors housing up top. Having said that, I agree with Councillor Parkinson and Pearson that I think this needs to be its own reserve fund, just based on the previous motion that was brought forward where it says the entirety of the fund. I would hate to amalgamate the two, so I'm in favor of creating its own bylaw.
Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, and to add to both of those, it was also stated when the seniors presented that they wanted to be able to apply for funds, so they had to show that they had support from the district to be able to do that.
Councillor Loggins?
Going forward, I know we did have a brief discussion about extending this as well, so that it would be a continual $50,000 a year. But I would like to know where the community center committee would fall into this as well, and what they would have to say about, like if there's any connection between the community center committee or a community group committee in general and the funds and the reserve fund, because none of the committee's recommendations were implemented for this.
I don't have an answer for that, but we can bring it up at the committee of the whole. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, as I understand too, it was only for the 5 years with the 50,000. Yeah. It wasn't ongoing, right?
Yeah. It would be helpful when we get the bylaw in front of us. Is there a way of bringing out the report from 5 years ago that led to the like when we first established that fund?
Your worship, yeah, we'll definitely look for that. We did look for as much as we could find when we were preparing this report. Just found the resolutions, but there must be something for that, because we found it back at 2013, but it looks like it was created even before then. So.
Yeah, because I know there was talk of that's when the seniors had moved for a time into this building here, and then had moved elsewhere in the community, and then there was something that started the whole purpose of that being for a seniors drop-in center. But it would be good just to have the report that established that particular fund at that time. I'd have to go into Councillor Casper's archives. Yeah, I know. Okay, so we do have a motion, which is that it? No, that's not it.
I believe it. Sorry, Your Worship. I believe that council directs staff to draft a new reserve fund bylaw for the seniors youth facility.
Okay, so I'll question on that, or Councillor Loggins?
Just one more, because you were just talking about a report coming forward with the history and information. If we can get some clarity on why the community center committee was ever even created.
I think that's that's different than the establishment of that bylaw, but we can have a different motion for that. The report would be that I've asked for is what led to this fund being established. So that's 5 years ago. So it would be in existence somewhere.
Yeah, I just feel like that it doesn't stop at 5 years ago. There's more information that leads up until now, right?
Right,
So
yes.
I feel like that falls into that 5-year timeline between now and 5 years ago, that it should be included in that report.
Okay, sounds good. All those in favor? Opposed? Are you in favor, Councillor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. I know it's just there was a bit of a delay there, so I wanted to make sure. Okay, 11.3, Affordable Housing Committee Terms of Reference. Councillor Loggins. This is your notice of motion, is it not? No, it's not a notice of motion. We had a notice of motion, though, to establish an Affordable Housing Committee. Okay, so these are the terms of reference?
So I'll move that Council adopt the terms of reference for the Affordable Housing Committee.
Okay, there's just some hands up from staff here.
Thank you, Your Worship. With Council's permission, staff has 2 suggestions to amend the terms of reference. So given the scope of the committee responsibilities, staff recommend and can support having a planning staff member designated to the committee that would be able to attend the meetings, and that would be for the scope of the responsibilities that have been given to the committee, deal with policy, which need to be done in combination with our OCP, and we just feel that that would benefit greatly from having a planning staff member attend. And then further request clarification on creating an affordable housing definition for consideration by council, which is identified as the first bullet under the affordable housing strategy. Staff recommend changing the word from create to review, as there is an existing definition in the district's OCP that was developed using the CMHC definition.
Okay, so there's a motion, and then there's just some staff recommendations to just amend the terms of reference slightly to review and to add a planning staff. Is the mover okay with those changes? Okay, do I have a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Discussion on the motion, Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship to staff. So the staff support is required, all of those 4, because you have planning on here, so I'm not quite sure what.
Yes, we would create a new one that the required staff is planning, and then the other 3 positions would be as required.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else? So I'm assuming once this is passed, then we'll advertise for those community members?
Yes, we will do that.
Okay, how long will that go out for, typically? A couple weeks?
I don't think we can get it in this Wednesday, but we can certainly advertise with the Sooke Pocket News as well, which I believe we did for the Arts Committee, but don't hold me to that. But so we can get that one out right away, and I believe we've just posted for a week last time so that we could get them up and running.
Okay.
But if we don't get enough membership, we can certainly leave that open, and if more applicants come in, then we can certainly bring those forward for council's consideration.
Okay, that would make sense, because the quorum is the majority of the membership, so we can just work with that. It may be wise just to do a media release just to help push out some messaging and to have some folks be able to to apply. That might tweak some interest there. Anything from anyone else? Okay, call a question then. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously, so stay tuned on that. Okay, so new business item is an item that I've asked to be reconsidered. It should be noted, though, that although the public hearing's been closed, there has been information drifting in from the public, which sort of taints the overall process. I'm still not comfortable approving third reading as is. I feel that there's some items in the application that need to be worked on, and that's where there's 2 options or 3 options for council to consider. One is that you could move third reading, but I'm telling you right now that I won't support it. The other is that the item be referred to staff, in particular to our planning staff, and that we have another report come forward that would involve then moving first and second reading of it and then scheduling another public hearing. But in some ways, I think that would allow for some of the concerns that were raised in the public hearing to be properly addressed. And I don't know that I can say any more of it. There were comments made by members of council, but also point out, but no amendments to the motion were made. And so later on, when we all look back and see what actually prevailed, it's the motion from council is the direction that prevails in the end. And I didn't see any amendments on the Brailsford Road. I didn't see anything about how the sewer was addressed. And in the two zones, one provides certainty and this one did not. So that's why there was a lot of unknowns for me. So those are options that council may consider. I can bring it forward, but ultimately it's for council to also decide how they want to progress with this. So mine would be that the whole thing be referred to staff.
Sorry, Your Worship, it wouldn't be directly referred to staff unless you're just wanting staff to bring back information that would deal with issues that were left unresolved at the public hearing. The proper procedure would be to defer reconsideration of third reading of the bylaw and direct staff to proceed with or to have a new public hearing. And then you could ask staff to provide a new report to that public hearing, but it shouldn't be directly referred back to staff at this point in time.
Okay, so we would defer third reading and ask, can you repeat that, please? I had it somewhere in this paper, and that's where...
Sorry, yes, so I believe what you're trying to achieve here is postponing reconsideration of third reading of the bylaw and directing that a new public hearing be held. And just to provide a little more information on that, anybody who did provide input at the first public hearing does not need to resubmit that. We would, of course, include all of that information with the new public hearing, and we would include that information on our new notices, that additional resubmission of information does not need to be made.
Okay, so it's a reconsideration of third reading, but it's been postponed. But then this would allow for a staff report to come forward that would address some of the items that were raised during the public hearing.
Yes, that's correct. And if council wanted to identify those issues that they wanted addressed in the report, they could do that.
We could do that now, or we would have to...
Yes, because we would be moving forward with a public hearing if that's council's direction. I also would just let you know that, of course, we haven't met the requirements for advertising for the June 25th, but our head of planning is unavailable to attend the July 9th council meeting, and I think it's very important that they be there. So then we would move forward with a public hearing for July 23rd.
Okay. So comments from members of council. Councillor Berger, then Pearson.
Yes, thank you. Through you to staff, I just was reading through our minutes, and it was my recollection that the motion that was passed and then defeated did have mention of Brailsford sewer going through, as well as there was two things. There was Brailsford sewer, and I'm sorry, I can't remember.
If I may, through your worship, those were motions that I had drafted, which I sometimes do when council is having conversation, which I anticipate might lead to an amendment to the motion that is up on the screen. So those were drafted, but never included. So no one ever put them forth as part of the motion. So they just essentially disappeared when the third reading failed. So there was nowhere to go after third reading failed.
It was never amended. They were just comments made that Brailsford should connect through, that we need to have the needs of the neighbors and the sewer because there was a guarantee under this. But the first and second, as they were initially presented at the start, were never amended.
So I'm just perplexed by that because when I casted my vote, I remember reading it on the screen thinking that that was all encompassing. So
No, it
I'll
wasn't.
have to go watch the webcast again.
Yeah, there was no amendment made. Councillor Pearson?
Now I'm really confused because I think that the discussion is that Brailsford, as an example, Brailsford, the piece of Brailsford was about the bollards and it being connected. So, and we talked about that and said, okay, that was part of the discussion. And when I voted on it, that's what I believed I was voting for, that, as well as the agreement to be part of the original DP to hook up those sewer people on Maple Park was also part of the motion that I because we couldn't separate that DP. That was a condition of the original DP, and that the developer agreed that he would live up to the terms of the original DP. So it seems confusing now that we're talking about something different to me. That could be only me, though.
Yeah. Through worship, there definitely was discussion to that. Like I say, I know that I drafted that if council wanted to consider that, which I will often do, just because it's difficult to try and capture the intent of council after all of the discussion has taken place. But I know that if people want to go back to the video, there was no specific motion to amend third reading to include those other issues such as sewer and continuation of Brailsford.
Okay. So through the
Keep
chair.
going.
So, but again, the essence of what we voted on was there was no bollard to the connection, so that wasn't really for me, and that the DP included the sewer hookup. That was part of the original DP for that property, right? So we were voting on third reading. We had passed first and second. So there was, I don't see where that had to be amended in the motion, because the original DP included that.
Well, that's why when you go back to the direction, it's the motions and the minutes that prevail, and now it's not in there. So, yes, we talked about it, but third reading was moved quickly in its entirety, because I'm looking at it right now, and there was 10 different points to it.
Right.
But it didn't involve any of those other points. They are not one of these 10 here. So yes, there was a discussion that council would like to see this, but there was no amendment made for certainty. There's some other things in here, but not that. Councillor Loggins?
Hopefully this will help us all move forward, but that's why we're here, reconsidering.
Yes.
Just so that we can get those things written down and move forward. And the way to move forward is, unfortunately, through the whole process of going through another public hearing, but that way we have all of those points encompassed in the motion.
And then it would be captured. So that's where the Brailsford piece, the sewer, even with the sewer, it was just discussed sort of as it was raised here in chambers for those neighbors that came in and spoke, but perhaps not all of them. So yeah, we talked at length about it, but there was no amendment to it. So that's where, I don't need to repeat what Councillor Loggins said, but this way would just bring back clarity as to what's going to happen and allow for that to be addressed. Or we just leave it. I mean, the other thing is where it is just it's just left and nothing happens at all. So this at least would allow some sort of movement on this, but it would be properly captured, and hopefully we'll see that come forward in that recommendation. And so we talked also about the affordable housing, and in this case, what I would like to see from staff in the report is just a bit of a comparative as to what the current zone outlines for affordable housing and what the next one does. This project is not building out any form of affordable housing. It's just making a contribution into the reserve. So I get that. This is not an affordable housing project. So my concern at the time is, are we approving the appropriate supply for what is needed within the community right now? This is not affordable housing. That's why there's been an increase to the cash reserve. The other zone had a build-out required or significantly larger. So that's where it's looking at that. And the other one was the context of having toddler equipment in the playground. Is that the right type of equipment? It's great to see some form of play equipment established, but I think it should be as selected by staff, because we don't want to duplicate what already exists in Broomhill Park. There's a gap in terms of having play equipment for older kids available, and I think staff could make that call. And then we heard that this is being geared to builders and not necessarily to first-time buyers. So it's just finding the right need in the playground. There's nothing worse than seeing a playground that nobody uses because it's not sized appropriately. Toddler equipment only fits a few years, and then it's not used. And I think that would be a reasonable fit. And then there was concerns always about parking, but I think that can be addressed if it's purpose-built. So we can maybe get some discussion about parking. And then just looking at, this zone allowing the much smaller lot size, duplexes, and then secondary suites in all of the lots. So it's always the case of how parking is going to be resolved. So that would be, should council look to have this come back with those details reported out from planning in July. Councillor Pearson?
Okay. I'm going to kind of guess at what council's going to do. So I'll make a motion that we reconsider third reading and schedule a public hearing, a second public hearing for the same issue as soon as possible.
Okay, it would be in July, the second meeting in July.
Yeah, sorry, to postpone reconsideration of third.
Thank you.
So that would be, we've heard the second, July 23rd? July 23rd.
Does that give us enough time for the advertising?
Absolutely, and it will allow our head of planning to work with the applicant to resolve some of these outstanding issues.
Thank you.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Ray?
I'm just concerned about the length of time that it's going to take to bring this back to council. Me personally, I'd be prepared if we had some dates to, once we can get the advertising, perhaps do a special council. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that's a pretty long time to have somebody wait in our community to do a development to July the 23rd.
Through your worship, unfortunately our head of planning has some scheduled vacation and won't be available, and I don't think it's a good idea to proceed with this public hearing without having planning representation at the meeting.
Anything else? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, we have correspondence here from May 23rd to June the 7th. Move receipt of correspondence by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Berger. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
I think Councillor Parkinson was ahead of me.
All right, you seemed quite. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Pearson. I recognized you, right?
Okay. The letter from Ron Nish about the fishing closure, I'd like to bring that forward.
That's already separated out.
Yeah, I saw that, so I just want to make sure that we didn't miss it because it looked like that was the end of the agenda.
That follows in 13.2. Councillor Parkinson.
And I was going to ask to bring out the BC Hydro invitation to meet at UBCM.
Okay, there's that. And I'll just comment on this that there's also a request of a letter of support so we can probably just discuss these. There's a motion to receive them all and discuss the items. Fine. So with the Hydro one, it's an invitation to meet at UBCM. And I'm prepared to do that. I just want to know,
I have questions for them.
Why are we meeting them? So we can request the meeting, but we want to go in and list out why. So maybe if you can.
I thought that if we meet with them, we can discuss about the grants that they offer for the art projects throughout town.
Okay. That's a good one.
That's what I would like to if I were going.
Okay. You're not going, so just.
I would like you to do that.
Yes, I can do that. And maybe you can give me a bit more context on that.
Yep.
Anything else that we would want to meet with them on? Last time it was about doing a some sort of a barrier to help protect the hydro poles at the 17 mile, because they seem to move in front of vehicles, and it takes the parking or the power out in the East Sooke area quite often. But I don't know what more can be done to do that in that area. So it's just something to think about. So that's one. So we'll follow up on that. I did get a call. There's Ryan Callahoo from Callahoo Law. They're doing a big piece on the speculation tax. So if you do hear of anyone that is interested in that, it would be best just to direct them there. And the other one was the Victoria Sport Tourism. Keith Wells is looking for letters of support for the 55-plus games.
I think that's good.
So I think it would be worth sending in a letter of support for that.
I agree.
So maybe we'll make a amendment then that we receive this, and also with the amendment being that we provide a letter of support for the 55 games.
Second.
On the amendment? Okay, so that's just on the amendment. There was also in that letter asking what sort of events could be potentially hosted within our community.
Horseshoes.
Horseshoes, so that's a good one. Horseshoes, mountain biking, anything on the harbor, paddleboard. I don't know what the games are comprised of, but it would be good to just send some ideas, and of course they'll see what works. Slow pitch, soccer and turf field related. Pickleball, we did do a grant for that. Pickleball. Paddleboard, kayaking. What else would we do there? Swimming? Can you? Maybe? Where do we?
We don't have one.
We don't have any of that. Yeah. Okay. Well, that gives us a sampling anyway, so we'll do that. And is any member of council interested in attending any of their meetings as they come up? Okay. Councillor Loggins and Parkinson. We'll stay tuned. Okay, so I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And now on the main motion as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, next is the Sooke fishing closures. Councillor Pearson, please.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that that the mayor and council send a letter to Mr. LeBlanc outlining what happens in our community from a fishing point of view. We have 3 volunteer groups who spend tireless hours trying to enhance salmon. The fishery closure, I think, has a potential negative effect on our community from recreation, but from a publicity point of view. This, some people come for fishing, but they also bring their significant others, families, children, all of these things that come to our community for fishing opportunities. And now it's been widely shared that fishing has been reduced in Sooke. So I think that there needs to, the government has missed any consultation in this process about what they could do for us as a community to alleviate some of the impact of this closure. So I think it's important that Minister LeBlanc puts an action plan to place to help us with the transition, with the change management plan. Aside from the closure, it's interesting because I've attended several meetings with SBA, IC, and Sport Fishing Institute as they made presentations here in Sooke. The proposal that the fishermen agreed to was, I think you guys are all good on geography. The original proposal was from Sheringham Point to East Point at Port Renfrew. The fishermen suggested slightly west of Sheringham Point from Fossil Bay to slightly east of, or slightly west of, I guess I'm going to say that way, east of East Point, so that there was a refuge for the SRKW, and so the fishermen said, yes, we will support that. If you can just move your boundaries a little bit, we would like to participate in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration. In fact, they moved the boundaries actually further to the east from Sheringham to Otter Point in a straight line, which severely impacts a large recreational fishing area. And it's not only closed to salmon fishing, which is supposed to be the point of the SRKW, is the Chinook salmon, but it's closed to all fin fishing, which is the halibut, rockfish, everything. It's not closed to commercial fishing for crabs. It's not closed to boats to go in there on a recreational basis, and it's not closed to the whale watching boats to go into the area. So it seems like it's an emotional closure done by a very powerful group of lobbyists in Ottawa. So I think the district should write a letter. But we need to outline what we do here in Sooke. We have 3 groups of tireless volunteers from Sooke Salmon Enhancement, Sooke Salmon Restoration, and then the SVAIC Fish Net Pen Project, where they put 1 million fry back into the ocean in Sooke, and I think it's a slap in the face to a large group of volunteers. I think everyone wants to participate in protecting the southern resident killer whales, and it feels like it feels very, very disrespectful in the communication. So, anyways, I would like to make a motion that we draft a letter and outline some of my points to the Minister LeBlanc.
Second.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Pearson. That's moved and seconded. Speaking on it, Councillor Loggins.
Yes, thank you. Several months ago when the announcement came out, I made a motion, and I believe it was passed at Council to invite the DFO to Sooke. I don't know where that fell and if we did actually get to invite them, but if we could look at that and perhaps send the invite along with the letter, then it might be a good time to do that.
Yep, we can do that. We sent the last letter in March of this year and never received a response. Don't always. Sometimes we do, but often we don't. But we did send it there, and I think it just needs to be, we can include that letter and then also build on it as well, I think. Councillor Ray?
I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate to copy our MLA into the letter?
Yep, MLA and our MP. Actually, I know our MP, Randall Garrison, has been involved with he was there when the 1 million fry were released and has been quite vocal on this issue as well. So it should go to the both of them. Okay. Anything else? Okay, may actually circulate the draft just to make sure that we get some good points in there. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Verbal reports. One thing you may know, and for the interest of those here and viewing online, is that the District of Sooke's annual report, draft report, is now available online on the district website, and print copies here are also available on request. So if you just let the staff know so that they could have time to prepare one for you. We do have a committee of the whole scheduled for 6 o'clock on June the 23rd. So that way we can have an opportunity to receive broader input on the draft, and then we would actually just receive it at the open meeting that would follow on that date. So that would be in 2 weeks' time. The 25th. Okay, so June the 25th. So that's all here, and just like to thank staff for all the work on this. There's a refresh that you'll see in the photos, and just the layout. It's quite clear to read and gives department highlights, of course, as it always does, but just using a lot of our in-house resources. And yeah, very nice. Thank you. So be more time for that. Okay. As you know, there is a health event occurring this Saturday. The Sooke Health Planning document, in case you haven't read it, is already on our website, and that would be presented. The event is being hosted by Island Health, the District of Sooke, and the Primary Health Working Services Group, Island Health, I think I mentioned, and the South Island Division of Family Practice. It's meant to be a drop-in, drop-out event. It's a Saturday, so we know people are busy, but the main objective is to now obtain as much public input into the Sooke Health planning process as possible. The stakeholder group met in November, and that's all local stakeholders, and then created this document. So now it's just looking ahead and getting that. So there will be very brief presentations It's at the Sooke Baptist Church from 1 to 4. Some may ask why that particular location. It's what we could find. It's very busy in Sooke at various community places, so it's what was available, accessible, and parking available. So that's why that location was chosen, as some of the others were not. So just looking forward to seeing you there. There's also a very short survey on access to primary health providers also on the website. We're encouraging as many people to go online to fill out the survey as possible, but there is also print copies that will be available and collected at that time as well. That said, I do have a very important meeting that I've landed now with the Minister of Health this coming Wednesday, and it will be to advocate for their support on the plan, and it's just how things go. So I'm going to miss portions of the CRD board meeting, and unfortunately Councillor Casper is away, so we're not going to be there. But it's just, I have to take with ministers what options are available. So we'll be there and advocating for that, and also for support, more support to go towards public health. So this is for families in particular. With all the growth happening in Sooke and the West Shore, there's been no increase to public health services. And where Sooke families are really falling short are on things like speech therapy and physio for young toddlers. So when young kids are not even moving at 12 months, they need to have and see ongoing physio, and for families it's a struggle to have that service available. So those are just a couple of things that are really needed out here in our community. So those are a couple of things. And the annual report. Anything else from anyone at this time? Councillor Parkinson?
So, Councillor Loggins. Through your worship, Councillor Loggins and our CAO, Brent Blackhall, attended FCM. And I just wanted to say one of the tours that I went on was the library tour. So they just built a new library themselves, which is quite a bit different than ours. But I got a lot of great ideas of what we can be doing here, so I thought it was very good for us. I will come back with a further report on other events that I attended there. And then on Friday, June 8th, I went on a tour of the sewer plant. Went through it all once again, had a nice tour, and then I went out with Dan and we looked at all the lift stations that we had painted. And so looking at refurbishing those, the paint after 10 years is starting to come off. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Loggins?
Thank you. I, too, will bring some more information back because I haven't not had a spare moment to go through all my notes from FCM. But it was fantastic, and one of the highlights was going on a tour of the gardens that were there and seeing how fortunate we are in our community to have some incredible community gardens. Granted, it's Halifax, so the weather is different, and it's probably more difficult to have a garden there. But our community garden at Sun River beat out their community gardens just like 1,000 times over. And they'd been gardens they'd had for 30 plus years. So that was really cool to see. It was a proud moment for me. They also spent most of the tour showcasing their pizza oven. And everyone was like, wow, they have a pizza oven. I was like, whatever, we've got a pizza oven. So that was really cool, another proud moment for our community. And then they do have a beekeeping program that that Dartmouth and Halifax regions help fund through a nonprofit that's run by youth ages about 9 to 13. And they go around to 7 different gardens, and they help feed the bees with and harvest the honey and sell the honey and put the money back into the nonprofit. So that's an idea that I'll bring back to the community as well, because it's definitely something that we can achieve here. So yeah, I'll come back with more information. I went to the Women's Breakfast, the Youth Forum, and a few other notable events during the conference.
No, that's great. Look forward to hearing more about it. Councillor Berger?
Yeah, I wanted to give a quick update. On June 6th, we had a development and land use meeting. I can't even remember our appropriate title. We were going through bylaw 404 and looking at ways that we could update it, but what really rang true again, and even more so at this last meeting because we spent quite a bit of time talking about it, is just how outdated our plans are. When we're looking at our OCP and our zoning bylaw, and there's the numerous plans that, in particular our transportation master plan and our road connectivity networks, because we're growing at such an alarming rate, we spent some time talking about if we don't get a handle on these plans and update them as soon as possible, we're just going to be a pocket of neighborhood. We won't be an actual contiguous community with the appropriate trails and roads. So I'll be working with Mr. Blackhall in the next little while to look and see what we can do as far as whether we have to do a budget amendment or what we can do to get some funds going forward, because it's really important that we start updating these plans. So you'll be hearing from us in the future.
Excellent. Also, on behalf of council, acknowledge all of our graduates. The MCS grad ceremony that took place at UVic, just over 150 students crossed the stage that day, so it was a very exciting moment, and it was an honor to witness that passing in time for these young people. And also the Navy League ceremony the annual review was on the following Sunday, so ages 9 to 14 or so very exciting. These young people are learning to dive at the age of 9. I was very impressed by the work that they do there. And then I did a small posting of the mobile health clinic that's now coming out to Sooke starting at the end of June. So there will be more, I think, coverage on this in the coming weeks, but it was just great to see the advocacy pay off because Sooke is now on their schedule. So this is, it's designed to help with harm reduction and to reach out to those that are living rough to get some form of preventative health treatment up front. It's staffed by a nurse, and then they're always looking for a volunteer physician to go with them. And then just the primary health working group in July is going to hold a focus group to talk about homelessness in Sooke and just what our steps are. And certainly there's a gap in the community, but how can we work together and address it in a more meaningful way. So that's going to happen in June. And there is the ministry open house, the transportation. That's still a go, as far as we know?
Your Worship, as far as I know, it is June 19th at the community hall.
Not at the high school?
No, it was scheduled to be at the community hall.
Okay.
We were supposed to get notified probably before the end of this week, but I will follow up with that.
Okay, so it's still on June the 19th, and my understanding, too, is that they shifted it to the high school, but we'll wait for the release to finalize it, but the date is still a go, and that's where the findings of the corridor study would be shared with the public, and also the designs for Sooke River Road and the like. A lot of the things that we've been kind of waiting for are all coming. Okay, so on that, there's no notice of motion, there's no rise of report, motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry, Mr. Blackhall.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick few minutes here.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Wasn't on the agenda, so I just want to get in here if I could. I do want to, as you mentioned about the annual report, it is available for draft. And speaking to Councillor Berger's concerns with the bylaws, that is in the CAO message about the work that is remaining. I did want to point out that our fire chief did do a presentation at the Fire Chiefs Conference of BC, and it was very well received on asset management planning, and that's on using our asset management software and doing some showing the impacts and long-range planning and apparatus planning. So that was well received and worked very well with our GIS department here. I do want to thank corporate services as well for the work on the annual report. That's a lot of work at a very busy time for them with the election and a bunch of other minutes and committees, et cetera. In particular, Jennifer Royer-Collard did a great job, and just want to acknowledge that. I do want to also mention that we did hire a person for the Deputy Director of Finance, and you were all messaged on that, and that is Rachel Gray, and she will be starting on the 18th. That's it.
Councillor Loggins?
Sorry, just a quick follow-up. I think another thing to be proud of in our community is, and with our with the whole building here is our asset management software, as you were mentioning, and also our GIS software. There's probably a billion other things, but when I do go to these conferences, people are really lacking in those areas, and we're really fortunate to be able to have it. So it's something that is often overlooked, but I do hear it when I go to these conferences.
Oh, absolutely. Mr. Blackhall?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow up on that, too, walking around the trade show floor of the FCM, you realize, we actually are ahead of a lot of other places. And, the reps that are there, and we're already using and way ahead of even what they're trying to get other people signed up for. So.
No, that's true. Excellent. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.